Gracias. My name is Shahid Chaudhry. No habla español, so I appreciate your patience while I work through these slides. I learned a couple of words. Estoy aquí, Montevideo, Uruguay. And most important, thank you. And most important, ¿dónde está el baño? So I work with Microsoft, as he mentioned. I'm a senior technical evangelist. You might be wondering, what does that mean? What do? I do a variety of things. I do a lot of business applications, Azure Cloud Solutions. But sometimes you may get a little bored building business applications. You want to do something fun. And today we'll talk about how you can make games with the same tools, .NET, C#, Visual Studio, with the help of one of our partners, Unity, to make games for Windows and Xbox One. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors from, I guess, my employer, Microsoft, all the way down to Zillartal. We have a lot of sponsors here who make everything possible, so thank you for that. My name is Shahid Chaudhry over here, as you see. Work with a variety of things, and if you want to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn. I have a local meetup. If you're ever in the DC area, that's a meetup that I run. And of course, you can find me on Twitter. It's @ShahidC, which is just my first name and last initial. And last but not least, my blog is wakeupandcode.com. Usually what I'll do is when I do a presentation, I'll put the slides over there. If you want to take some notes, the best way to get everything is to download the slides from my website. So a little bit of background and my games background outside of my business apps. I worked on a couple of Xbox 360 games, and I realized very quickly that no one really wants to buy my stupid little games for $1. But what if I made some free developer tools that all the developers around the world could use? I made some sales tools for myself, and I realized that more and more people for Xbox development were using sales analysis tools to figure out how their games were doing around the world. And that led me to get this little mention in Xbox Magazine. I'll see if I can zoom in on the screen over here. There you go. So I published under the title OnyxSoft Games, but under OnyxSoft Labs, I was able to publish some sales analysis tools and got a little recognition there. But what it allowed me to do is connect with the developer community. There are some MVPs in our midst here today. Microsoft MVP means most valuable professional, and some MVPs also become employees. I had a weird situation where I was getting the MVP award and my job offer at the same time. I couldn't take both, so I took the job, and I'm glad to be here with you today. If anyone here is on Facebook, I also have a bunch of developer groups I have on various topics, Xbox One, Unity, and so on. So a couple of quick announcements that we've been making, things that you should know we've been making since last year. This year is Phil Spencer. He's the head of Xbox. Recently got promoted to a higher position as a VP within the Microsoft to lead all games within Microsoft. There were a lot of announcements made during the Build conference. One was to activate your own Xbox retail console. So whether you bought an Xbox back in 2013 or you buy one today with the Xbox One S, and coming soon, the Xbox One X in November, you can publish games for any of these platforms, and you'll get the benefit of reaching out to all the gamers that are available on these platforms. And the same tools, then you can publish to PC so that your games runs on Windows as well. There's also the ID at Xbox program. ID at Xbox is for independent developers. And I'll talk a little bit more about the ID program. And also we have a special message for the director at ID Xbox, who is not here today. He's currently at a games conference in Australia, but he has a message for .NET Conf in Uruguay. So I'll share that at the end, a message of encouragement. So once we had 2017 at Build, we had additional programs. This is the Xbox Live Creators Program. So think about a game idea you have in your head and you want to publish that game, but you can't quite get it to the finish line. You can't get it polished enough, big enough to publish to the store. It hasn't gotten approved. What the Creators Program does, it allows anyone in this room to build a game today and then publish it with less of a hindrance. You can publish it much more quickly, and then you can play it on your own console that you can buy from the store. You don't have to wait for Microsoft to approve anything. There's no licensing necessary. It's easy to configure, and most important, you can self-publish. This was something that was true during Xbox 360, and now it's more prominent for Xbox One. There's millions of gamers around the world, and you can connect to all of them by publishing a game yourself. And just as I promised, on my slides I have things like links to more information. So when you download the slides from my website, I'll put it up after this presentation, you can get access to more videos, more descriptions, step-by-step instructions on how you can get started today. So E3 Game Conference happens every year. It's more of a consumer game conference. We talk about the games that we're releasing, but this was the big announcement that we made with Xbox One X, the most powerful game console in the world, is releasing in I think about a week or so in November. So you haven't, even if you haven't ordered the new one, an existing Xbox One X is good enough for all the development needs today. You can still use Xbox One S and Xbox One. And most important, there is backward compatibility being extended, so you know you have a wide array of gamers to reach out. I'm going to see if I can play this video really quick. See if the audio comes up. So I'll pause it right there. Let me put this back on. So this is to get a quick idea of some of the things that you have available to you. All the big players have the same hardware as you do. Can everyone still hear me? Okay. All right. All the big players in the market have the same hardware as you do, and you can build games like this at home with high-quality tools as well. So let's talk about UWP, or Universal Windows Platform. If you've done any work in C# and Visual Studio, you also have the tools necessary today to build a UWP app. If you've built a UWP app using the usual tutorials, you'll see it's just a bunch of buttons and forms and labels and other things. So what we do is we've provided some tools with our partners to build visual graphical games that you can develop and then deploy to Xbox and other platforms. And we'll talk about that. I'll show some demos as well. But just a quick hands really quick. How many people here already have any level of game development experience? You've worked on some games a little bit? Okay. I see a couple of hands. What I'll do is I'll leave you with some resources to get familiar with Unity. And so this won't be a tutorial on how to build a game with Unity, but rather I'll tell you where to go to learn that experience. And today you will learn how to get your game onto our Windows and Xbox platforms. But first of all, you may be wondering, well, why should I do this in the first place? There's a lot of features that have been coming out. In the past, this was not possible. So if you play a game and you realize that you publish it, but if someone's just playing by themselves, they're not really enjoying it. There's no competition. So we have things like leaderboards and statistics and connected storage, so you can connect into Azure or some database backend. We have ability for games to link into game hubs and clubs where people can feel like they're a part of something. And we've provided some tools for Unity developers to also use free plugins that we put out on GitHub. And I'll show you how to set that up as well. But first, dev mode activation. The screen here is a little busy. There's a lot of text here. I don't want you to read everything. Just look at the main thing that I've highlighted. I want you to know that there is a set of questions and answers we've been getting from the public, and we put everything out there for you to see how to set up your dev mode. Dev mode allows you to just buy an Xbox One from the store or use the one that you already have and set it up right away. And towards the end, I'll also cover how you can get not one, but up to 2 free Xboxes from Microsoft so you can realize your game idea. So we want to make sure that everyone has the tools necessary. So we have all sorts of free offerings for you today. UWP on Xbox One is a way to package your game as a universal Windows platform app and then push it onto the Xbox One. To get started, we have step-by-step guidelines on how you can set up your machine, and I'll show you a quick demo on the minimum required thing that you need to do. So here I have a tool called Unity. So it's a very visual tool. As you can see, it has the menus on the top. And at first glance, it looks a little complicated. So what we do is we allow you to create the design and the visuals of your game in something like Unity. You can pull in assets from other places that have been created, such as the Unity Asset Store, which allows you to not only buy items that others have created, you can sell your items as well. And for any beginner, there is a lot of free content. And so the best way to get to the Asset Store is to click on the Windows menu on the top, and then click on Asset Store. So let's say you want to make some sort of fun game with little bouncy characters. You can look up cartoon characters on the Unity Asset Store. If you want to make maybe a military game, you can download maybe some military characters and weapons and so on. So I'll let it load for a couple of seconds. The connection here is a little slow. But the Unity Asset Store, again, once it loads up, allows you to download things that other people have created. Once you have experience and you create things, you can also put out your own creations on the Unity Asset Store. It could be a complete template. It could be other assets you've created. You can put those out as well for other people to use. And there's a lot of free packages. As you can see here, it says top free packages. And you can check out a lot of the free packages that are available today. And these are cycling all the time. You can get a lot of new things. But once you create that, what else can you do over here? You can export games to the Xbox platform. So if I click File and Build Settings, so I'm going to zoom in over here. So there's the File menu, right? So I clicked Build Settings. So here you'll notice a variety of platforms. And the reason I like to show this is that the first one says PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. So just by making a game today, you can deploy it to any personal computer, PC, Mac, and Linux. That's pretty much 100% of the market. This is important because you may be wondering, I will spend a lot of time on this, I'll spend my effort, I'll buy some hardware, use your own computer. Who's going to play my game? And you know that you can run these games on pretty much any platform available. And right after that, you see the Universal Windows Platform. So that's not only Windows, but it's also Xbox, it's the Microsoft HoloLens, it's all these Windows mixed reality devices that are coming out later this year for more immersive VR or virtual reality. And this gives you the ability to create a game one time and make changes for all these different platforms. So if you're wondering, is it worth my time to make a game in this tool using Unity, using Visual Studio to deploy? The answer is absolutely yes, because you can start in one place today and you can deploy to a variety of platforms. In case you want to start small and say, I just want to use the phone in my pocket. Most people these days have Android or iPhone. I know I work for Microsoft, but I also carry an iPhone these days. How many people have iPhone here today? All right, how many people with Androids? Any Windows phones at all? All right, I see one guy back there. All right, thank you. There's a variety of tools that are available, another one there. But what I'd like to show you is that we do support a lot of platforms here. And as you can see, iOS and Android are supported here as well. But you may be wondering, there's an Xbox One at the bottom there. So let me do this. Xbox One. And there's two of them. So let me quickly explain the difference between the two. When you get a full dev kit from Microsoft, it has been officially approved for development for your startup or individual company. You can get an Xbox One license for Unity to deploy your game directly to Xbox One and use the full power of the Xbox One available. When Universal Windows Platform was first announced for Unity, we didn't have the full power of all the resources available. We just had a way for you to quickly publish your game. But now there's some changes, and I'll explain some of the differences between them. You can get more capabilities, more hardware resources available for both UWP and full Xbox One dev kits. So you get a lot more power. But when you start with your first game, you don't really need all that power. You can start small, make a small game first that you can complete. All right. So once you get started, a couple of things I'd like to highlight is you do need a computer with Windows 10, because in the end, when you're deploying to a UWP, your computer is running Windows 10, the Xbox is running Windows 10, and if you choose to go to our immersive VR headsets or HoloLens, that's also Windows 10. A lot of people that choose to use a Mac, on a Mac you can run Unity, and you can make the game entirely on a Mac. When it's time to deploy to the device, it is recommended to run Windows. You can run Windows within the Mac with Parallels or Boot Camp as well. So if you already have a Windows machine, whether on a PC or inside a Mac, either one will do. And if you're just getting started, you can download Unity free for Mac and run it natively as well. Just during the deployment part, you do need Windows to deploy to the Xbox. Down there I mentioned Visual Studio. How many Visual Studio developers here? All right, hopefully a lot of people. We're at .NET Conf, right? A lot of Visual Studio. Any Visual Studio Code? All right, I see a lot of hands too. So with VS Code, it's a little lightweight editor. You can do some changes on edits to your C# code. You can absolutely use Visual Studio Code with Unity to write all the code for your game. But again, when it comes time to deploy, you do need the full version of Visual Studio to do deployment. It can be the free edition. There is a community edition that's available for free for anyone in this room. Even if you have a full-time job, at your job you're using Visual Studio Enterprise, Professional, any other version, you can go home and download the community edition for free and do everything that the pro version lets you do. You'll see that I have both highlighted, Visual Studio 2015 Update 3 and 2017. When we first announced Xbox One Dev Mode, we started with 2015 Update 3. We do support 2017 as well. There are a couple of hiccups getting it to work. Sometimes our partner Unity launches ahead of time. We're trying to catch up with each other. I'll explain what the slight changes and also lead you to a blog post that explains it. I want to make sure you're comfortable working in these environments. So I did promise you more resources for UWP. I'm going to zoom in on this one again. So let me exit out of that and zoom in on the screen. So over here, you'll see that in the past, the blue charts over here are for what we used to have before when Windows 10 first launched. A UWP app didn't have access to all the resources, which is okay for a very light app with some buttons and labels. But if you have a game, you do want more resources. So here you have access to more of the CPU cores, more RAM, and more GPU power. And this is really good for games. Because as you know, when you play a game, you want it to look good, you want it to run well, more frames per second, you want it to get more power out of the machine that you're working with. So let's talk a little bit about the Xbox Live Creators Program. And I think if I'm running out of time, this gentleman here would probably flag me down. So I'll keep going as long as I'm not taking up the stage. So the Xbox Live Creators Program, this is very new. As we mentioned before, when the Xbox One came out in 2013, we first announced that here's a console that anyone can use, and it's a little restrictive. There was no easy way to get your independent game on the platform. With Creators Program, we're trying to bridge that gap where you can not only develop it and publish it to your own console, you can now publish it to the store with minimal effort. So on the Creators Program, there's a couple of things that are highlighted here. So when I highlight things, I like to zoom in. I know that text is a little tiny over there, but I'm sure you can see this. So the certification process itself is simple. There is no concept approval required. What does that mean, concept approval? It means when you have that idea in your head and you want to share it with someone at Microsoft and you say, I want to put this game on Xbox, then someone has to typically approve that concept or idea and help you get that game to the Xbox. With Creators Program, you don't have to worry about that. You can start publishing the game, and you can also get access to Xbox Live features. So to make a game more exciting, more engaging, you get your Xbox Live features built in so that you can get access to leaderboards, identify the user, and play with your friends. Think about some of the games you may play on your phone today. If you have a favorite game, maybe you look at the leaderboards when you're done, or maybe you compare with a friend to see how you were doing. So this helps you get better integration with the Xbox Live. And at the very bottom, most important, build and ship what you have created. And just to show you I didn't make this up, when I post a screenshot of something and highlight something, I always put a link down there, which helps you see more information. Websites usually change, information gets updated. This way you have access to the latest information at all times. So now you know a little bit about how to get started with the program, how to get your games on there. You saw that with Unity you can export your game. There are a lot of different features that are a little different between ID at Xbox and also the Creators Program. So I'm going to zoom in on this as well. So the ID at Xbox program, when it was first launched, gave you access to all the features you could ever have for Xbox developers. With Creators Programs, some things are restricted. based on multiplayer, networking, and some other Xbox Live features that you have. So what you can do is, I won't read through all of these, but I just wanted to let you know there are some differences that are available. And you should just be aware that when you start off with the Creators Program, it's easy to get your game on the platform, but you do have to get into the ID at Xbox program to get all the features that are available. So power-wise, you do get a lot of power from the machine, but feature-wise, there are some features that are limited. So here's a quick screenshot of the Xbox dashboard itself. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here. The part of highlighted just says Xbox. What this means is when you go to the developer website, which is typically dev.windows.com, which gives you access to everything on Windows, typically your Xbox Live features are not enabled. So when you are integrating your Unity app to go into Azure and you want to connect to the Xbox Live features, what you will do is you go to your dashboard online, any browser, and enable the app that you created to use Xbox Live. And then when you use a Unity plugin to connect to Xbox Live, it will make sure that that app is connected. And I'll show you how that works as well. So Visual Studio, a lot of Visual Studio developers here. So the way Visual Studio works with Windows 10 is that Visual Studio 2017 has been available this year. Anyone here already upgraded to 2017? All right, a lot of you, that's very good. Still on 2015? Earlier than 2015? Maybe 2013, 2012? All right, good. So either you're 2015 or higher. So that's all you need really to get started. So you already have the tools. That means you already have the machine. You could literally go home or even go right after this break. Go to your laptop and install this right now and make a game. Maybe your challenge is to publish it by tomorrow morning. I wouldn't say to rush it that much. Some people actually do hackathons where they create games within a weekend, or sometimes they spend a couple of weeks. But the most games that are very created with care, those might take a couple of years. So I would say start small, and then try to build multiple games and get your games out there when you can. So the Dev Center, as I mentioned, dev.windows.com. It's a great place to get started. I try to remember the small URL because it goes to this really long one. It says developer.microsoft.com/blah, blah, blah, /Windows, kind of long. So dev.windows.com should take you to the version of the website that is local for where you live. So this one over here says en.us, that's the locale for English US. So if you go to the version in your country, it'll translate. So how many people here are local in Uruguay? All right, how many people coming from Argentina? From Brazil? From Colombia? All right, from anywhere else that I missed? All right, where are you from? Chicago. All right, we have one guy from the US, right? I actually work with David here, so he has a talk later today. All right, so the Windows Dev Center dashboard. So once you get to it, it should be localized for your country. If you ever have any feedback, like you see something, maybe that doesn't make sense, maybe the translation wasn't correct, maybe the translation is not available, feel free to reach out to me. I can talk to people within Microsoft to help make improvements. If any of the experience is not smooth for you, I'll take any feedback from you. I have my email address and even my phone number at the end. Don't call me in the middle of the night. But other than that, you can reach out to me with any feedback, any suggestions for improvement. So once you get to the dashboard, you set this up, and you want to make a game. Unity 2017 is the latest version. There's 2017.1, 2, and so on. I showed you the UI briefly. And also Construct 3. Now, what is Construct 3? That doesn't require any coding. It's a visual tool where you can drag and drop a bunch of things, and with the press of a button, you can actually deploy a game to pretty much any platform out there. All the mobile platforms, and it's got a couple of support for game consoles, including Xbox One. This is a very quick way to create a game without any coding. It does require some programming logic. If you know about things like loops and variables and constants and functions, any programmer would know all these terms. It's a very quick way to create games. But let's focus on Unity first. We saw the screens briefly on how you can take a game, click on File, Build Settings. That's what that is over there, that highlighted area that I showed you earlier. And over here, I showed you the different platforms. So just a quick recap on how that works. Also, there was something else called Player Settings. This is kind of important. If I go to the Unity menu again, I'm going to go to Unity and click on, let's get rid of this. Click on File, and then Settings. actually edit, project settings, and then player settings. So while that's up, I'll zoom in on this now. There we go. Let me go back there. File, project settings. Sometimes the zoom doesn't work with the projector setting. So I'll just read it out loud. It's edit and then project settings. There's a variety of settings there, and I'm just going to zoom in on the player settings to focus on this. This is also covered in the slides as well, so later on if you forget what this was, you can go and get it. And Unity, just to recap, is available on unity3d.com. It does allow for games for both 3D and 2D, but you can download it on unity3d.com. And since it supports different platforms, for the Windows platform, there's a version of the runtime that it supports. So here, if I go to the site, there we go. It mentions that it supports a version of .NET. It says the compatibility level is .NET 4.6, so it runs on the .NET framework. This is what allows it to then publish to the Windows and Xbox platforms. So this is one change you need to make when deploying to the Windows platform. And you're allowed to make these settings independently of each other. You can make different publishing settings for iOS versus Android versus Windows, Xbox, and so on, so that you can create the game in one place and then deploy to another place. So once you set up the configuration, you can now deploy to Visual Studio and use Visual Studio to deploy to your device. I did mention there was a free plugin we have available. It's called the Xbox Live Unity plugin. This one is available on GitHub. How many people here have a GitHub account? Hopefully all of you. For those who didn't raise your hand, you should go to github.com, create an account. It lets you do two things. Obviously, you can put your own open source stuff on there, but also you can, if you have a commercial account, you can get a private account as well. But also what you can do is you can contribute to other open source projects that are available. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Microsoft has now become the biggest contributor of open source, which was unimaginable many years ago. But now, since you have a lot of different ways to create different open source things, even our plugins and even .NET Core itself, a lot of it is open source. So once you get the plugin available to you, you can use that plugin to get some of those features I was talking about. There's also a new service we have called Nether for Azure Gaming Services. If you want to hook into Azure, Nether is something you can check out. And when I did mention there was a free tool available called Construct. Construct 2 first came out, available for Windows only, but there is a third version available, Construct 3, that is now cross-platform. It runs on PC, Mac, Linux, and it can deploy to Windows and Xbox One. This is pretty important because you can just pull out even your tablet and get a browser and create a game visually and deploy to Xbox One. Now, I've mentioned deploying to Xbox One from both Unity and Construct, but what does it really create? It creates a project for you to open up in Visual Studio. So what I'm going to do here is open up this project in Visual Studio, and you'll see it creates a bunch of different files. So it creates a bunch of different folders, and one of them says Universal Windows. And what you can do is you can right-click on this project, and then there's options to build the projects and publish it. But you can choose this remote machine option. So I don't have my Xbox here today, but when you choose remote machine, you would choose the IP address or the name of the Xbox sitting on your network. And if you just want to run it locally on your Windows machine, you would just use the current version, which is the local machine. So the same game that you run on your local machine, and you can connect any PC controller or Xbox controller. I did have a wired Xbox One controller as well. It's actually in my luggage right now. I hear from the airlines that my luggage has just arrived at the airport, so I'll pick it up before I leave. I went into the mall and bought this yesterday. So anyway, what you can do is deploy to a remote machine, and you can play directly on your console as well. So the settings for that, let me show you what that looks like. When you deploy for the first time, you go to Properties, and there is a Build option, actually a Debug option. And here you can see an IP address, similar to any IP address that you've seen. And most important, the authentication mode should be universal. So it uses the universal auth mode. It has a couple of options, Windows and Universal, and you choose Universal. to deploy to your device. And that's it. You click the button and it runs directly on the device itself. So what I want to do is I will continue to run through some of these slides, and I'll show you a demo as well. So to talk about Xbox One Dev Mode, I mentioned this slide, this part over here, where I showed you how to get to that setting. If you right-click on your properties for your project and you see where you enter the IP address. But if you were to deploy to the remote machine the first time, it will give you a pop-up and ask you, hey, would you like to deploy to a machine? What is the name or the IP address? And once you fill it in, it's always available in the project settings. The second screen over here is what it looks like on the Xbox One directly. So since I don't have the Xbox One with me, what I'll do is I'll click on this link and show you what that looks like. And whilst this is coming up, it should pop up on my browser. And let me scroll down here. I'm going to zoom in on this one right here. So this is what your Xbox looks like in dev mode. So don't be afraid. When it boots up, it'll look like this, but there's an option to switch the game console back to regular mode. So let's say you're playing a game at home and you feel like, oh, I want to make a game. You download the free Dev Activation app from the Xbox App Store, and when you say activate, it's going to automatically boot up in this dev mode, and now you can deploy all your apps and games, and you can see what's available. And when you're done, you can choose the option to go back to regular mode, and it'll just reboot one more time and go into regular retail mode so you can play your own store-bought games. This gives you an option to use the same console you have today and run it in dev mode. For security purposes, there is also an option to get a PIN number so that your device on Visual Studio can then link to the game console. If you have ever done any other deployment to, let's say, Windows phones, anyone do any Windows phones development before? Where I see one hand back there, two hands, all right, couple hands. So when you deploy to your device, you might have some sort of PIN number. So it does the same thing here. It activates that device and your Visual Studio to connect to each other. So once that's done and you're connected, now you're ready to run your game in dev mode. So here, this is actually a picture of my TV at home. Here I have a little spaceship game with the two spaceships there shooting at some rocks. And I built this on my machine. I used it to deploy to the device. Obviously, I couldn't bring my TV with my console here, but I took a picture of it to show how that's done. But I'll also show you another game as well in a few seconds. I wanted to give you some best practices before we wrap up to think about. So anytime you do any tutorials, it might say, start here. You go to unity3d.com and go to the tutorial section. It teaches you how to make games in 3D, 2D, everything you need to learn. And then you come to my slides and learn about how you can take that game and then publish it to Xbox. But I wanted you to think about a little more. Things like safe area. So when you have a game and think about a TV screen, there might be some text on the top of the screen that's really close to the edge, maybe at the bottom. Leave some border around it. It might seem obvious, but a lot of developers don't think about it, and on different TVs, it might not look good, things might get cut off. It looks also visually pleasing if you leave some borders around it. So this is called a safe area. If you ever watched the news or played a game, you'll notice that they have maybe some text at the bottom, text at the top, but it's not touching the edge, right? It's a little away from the edges. So think about the safe area when you do it. So what I have here is a link to a Unity Store package that helps you automatically draw a safe area based on whatever screen resolution you choose. That way, you can easily publish that. So what I did was, all I did was go to Unity, and then I went to the Asset Store. And since the name of this item is the Safe Area Viewer, also known as Title Safe Area, so you can go over here and say Title Safe Area. And depending on my connection, it might take a long time or not. So it's coming up pretty quick, and it says here that it's $10, so I purchased it for myself. So if this is something that you're not interested in, you don't have to get it, but if you choose to purchase it, you can get work that other people have done for you. So you decide in Unity whether you want to build something yourself, download something for free, or purchase something that someone else has built. So in this case here, I've already built it, I've already purchased it, so I can just click the word import. And what it does is it downloads the entire package, and it lets you, with one click, import all the resources and code into your project. And once it's in your project, then you can run it locally, and then you can include it in future projects for no additional cost. So again, Unity has a variety of things that are free. Some might cost a couple of bucks. And of course, you can sell things that you've built yourself. So if you chose not to buy something someone else has built, you built your own solution, think about, hey, what if I could share this with the world? You know, you can sell it for $1, $5, $10, or whatever you feel like it, and then you can even make money on the tools that you built. And I know as developers, a lot of us have built some tools just for ourselves to make our own work easier, but now we can resell those as well. Directional support is another thing I want to talk about. So this should be familiar, a lot of C# code. Any C# developers here? Hopefully a lot, all right. Any other JavaScript developers? All right. So Unity used to support both C# and Unity Script, which is based on JavaScript. So recently they announced they're going full speed with C#. So if you're a JavaScript or Java developer, it should be pretty easy to recognize this as just a method called fixed update. So in every cycle, there's a bunch of update method that runs multiple times a second. If your game runs 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, this will run that many times. And what this does is it creates these two variables that helps you detect two kinds of motions, horizontal movement and vertical movement. Horizontal is side by side, vertical is up and down. We can translate that movement to say, I want to add a force to my object and push it. You'll notice that I didn't say anything about keyboard or gamepad in here. So the cool thing about Unity is that it automatically figures out the direction, and it has some default values to figure out whether you're moving the horizontal with the keyboard or you're moving with the gamepad. This makes it really easy to program a game for multiple platforms. Same with button presses. It has some fire and jump buttons built in. So the fire one that's predefined says, get the button press and do something. So by default, the mouse click, the keyboard press, and the gamepad press automatically maps a button to make it jump, so a game can automatically do it much more quickly. So when something has been done for you, it makes your life that much easier. You don't have to write code and say, if someone presses the input button on a keyboard, and someone presses the button on a gamepad, and someone presses a button on a mouse, or any of these things. You can just say, did someone press fire 1? Then you can get it. And all of this is customizable within Windows. Here are some of the settings that I pulled up. Let me go ahead and zoom in on this too. So over here, in the Unity Input Manager, this is how you get to project settings and then Input Manager. You'll notice that something is defined as horizontal, something is vertical, and it is automatically mapped to a keyboard or a direction. You can change all of this. It's already done for you, but you can customize it to however you want. You can delete it and create your own. So all the beginner Unity tutorials will help you get through this, but I wanted to get you a feel for how easy it is to get started, and a lot of the stuff has been done for you. This is a quick controller configuration of this Xbox controller here, which is typical for a game controller. And it works a little different between Mac and PC, but it does work for both. What it allows you to do to quickly map those controllers. So the reason I mention this is because if you're just developing for a PC, you can use keyboard and mouse, but more and more people are using game controllers, and you can take that same setting and also project it to a console as well. So you can get the same game working on all these platforms if you think about controllers ahead of time. So make sure your game works on different devices, mouse, keyboard, mouse, and the gamepad, as much as you can. I mentioned the Xbox Live Unity package. When you import it, it looks like there's a bunch of files coming. We're not concerned with all the files. But what it does allow you to do is have this user that's displayed. So on this screen here, read it out loud. It just says fake user. But when you run this program within Unity, it allows you to run the game within the scene. So let me go ahead and run that right now. If I go to game. So here you see that the default placeholder changed to fake user 1, so automatically generates the user. So when you're developing the game, you don't have to worry about connectivity to Xbox Live. When you're logged in, it will automatically on your console prompt you for login, and it will log in the current user. But when you're developing, the Unity plugin is doing all the work for you and creates this fake user for you to log in. So let me go back to the rest of the slides here. So as we wrap up, what I wanted to do is touch briefly on that ID at Xbox program I mentioned, and then show you a popular game that has recently come out. With the ID at Xbox program, it's very successful. So ID at Xbox, easy to start, xbox.com/ID. Just as the other websites, it redirects to the longer URL. It may or may not be localized for your region. So again, try xbox.com/ID. It'll take you to the page you need to be. And then check out some of the highlights we have from E3. So if you go to YouTube and search for E3 2017, I won't play this video right now, but just to let you know, There's a lot of ID at Xbox games available. And I wanted to also announce that Cuphead has been out recently. Anyone here tried this game yet? See a couple of hands, very good. If you haven't tried it yet, it's basically a platform game that kind of looks like 1980s Mega Man Contra-style shooter, but the style is like a 1930s Mickey Mouse cartoon. And it's made in Unity, and I'm happy to announce that within the first 2 weeks, they made over $1 million very quickly. And again, for a small team working as an independent game, making millions of dollars in a couple of weeks is a very short time. But they're getting very good ratings on both Xbox and Windows, as it's a Microsoft exclusive, and we're very happy to partner with them. So what I'll do is that before I switch over to the Cuphead demo, I wanted to also show you some information from Xbox, or ID at Xbox. So initially people asked, will I get access to all these resources and leaderboards and services? And the answer was yes, yes, yes. A lot of people were a little confused. How much can I do with ID at Xbox? And just before I flew to Uruguay from the US, I asked Chris Charla, the director of Xbox, I said, hey, do you have a special message for the people who show up today? They came all the way to .NET Conf from wherever you're coming from. And he said, hey, keep coding and believe in yourself. So this message is especially for everyone in the room today. So thank you very much for that. What I'll do really quickly is I'll do one last demo. Do you have 1 minute? Okay, cool. So I'll do one last demo, and I will switch over user, switch account. And hopefully this works. And while I'm bringing it up, does anyone have any questions so far? Yes? Good question. So let me repeat the question. So the question was that, hey, I heard Cuphead was in development for a really long time, maybe about 7 years or so, because there was a lot of hand-drawn animation. They use a lot of frames to do a lot of things in the game. One thing that I like to point out is that, try to do things together with different people, because if you're working on it all by yourself, it's hard to get everything in the game. Hold on. Sorry. So it's hard to get everything in the game when you're working by yourself, so work in parallel. So people who are drawing the sprites for the game, they can start drawing all these animations, so he's going like that. I remember I turned this on, my wife was like, hey, that kind of looks like Mickey Mouse, like the lower part of it, right? One thing that Unity allows you to do is get your resources and separate it from your code, and you can replace resources with real-time or like your final resources versus your placeholder resources. So when you start, you don't need all the frames that you see in the game. You can start with something smaller, and then maybe have some placeholder or some sketches, concept art, and as you're developing the code, then that art can continue to develop. So again, a small team working in whatever time they had. The first version of Cuphead that I saw was at a Unity conference in Boston, Massachusetts, in the US, 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, looking pretty good. I played a good level, but now I was able to get this other level here. And because you asked a question, I'll ask for a second question, and in the meantime, could you come here and do be the volunteer? A big hand for our volunteer. What's your name? All right, go ahead. So this is, again, all made in Unity, and it's built on one platform, runs on everything. You can start with the red one.
You're up!
I think the right trigger. Right trigger. So a big hand again for our volunteers. Thank you. So again, thank you everyone for coming. If you have any further questions, just let me know. I'll be here the rest of the day. I'm leaving tomorrow. So I'll be able to hang out with you all. And thank you very much for coming, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.